There are some disappearances that seem, at first, to leave behind almost nothing. No clear goodbye, no certain witness, no single moment where the world can agree that everything changed. Only small, ordinary things remain. A car in a parking lot, a basket of clean laundry, a purse found days later in a place where it should not have been, and a family waiting at home. Trying to understand how someone could step out into the night and not come back. In the years that followed, this case would become stranger than most. Not because of a dramatic discovery or a final answer or a confession that settled everything, but because, for one brief and emotional season, the missing woman seemed to come home. Her children believed they had their mother back. Her husband believed his wife had returned. Her family tried to begin again. And then, just as suddenly, that hope was taken away. Tonight, we are going to move gently through that story. We will stay close to the documented facts, and we will avoid imagining what cannot be known. We will follow the quiet trail from a Tampa night in 1984 to a phone call in 1992. To the questions that still remain. This is a story about absence. It is also a story about hope, mistaken identity, and the way a family can keep searching even after decades have passed. Welcome back. Tonight's episode is a calm, true crime story for sleep. Written for quiet listening, black screen viewing, or a late evening when you want a mystery told slowly and respectfully. As always, the goal here is not to sensationalize a real person's pain. The goal is to remember the missing, to explain the case clearly, and to treat every person in the story with care. The woman at the center of tonight's episode was young. She was a daughter, a sister, a wife, and a mother. Public records list her full name as Lucinda Huels, though she was known by her middle name, Lucinda. She was 17 years old when she disappeared from Tampa, Florida, in October of 1984. Her case remains open, and even now, more than 40 years later, her name is still listed with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So, settle in, let the room become quiet, and we will begin in Florida, in the early autumn of 1984. In 1984, Tampa was a growing city with many different faces. There were family neighborhoods, busy roads, tourist spaces, working-class bars, and the constant motion of Central Florida life. Busch Gardens, one of the city's best-known landmarks, was nearby. Families came and went. People worked late shifts. Cars moved through warm evenings. And, like in many cities, ordinary life continued beside things that were harder to see. That year, Tampa Bay had also been marked by fear. Authorities would later connect a series of murders to Bobby Joe Long, who was arrested in November 1984, only weeks after Lucinda disappeared. Long admitted to killing 10 women in the Tampa Bay area, though he denied involvement in Lucinda's disappearance. His name has often been mentioned in connection with her case, but no public record has proven that he was responsible. That matters in this story, because with unsolved cases, especially older ones, it can be tempting to make a mystery feel cleaner than it really is. A known offender, a nearby timeline, a simple theory. But Lucinda's case has never been that simple. She was 17 years old. The Charlie Project lists her as Hispanic, with brown hair and brown eyes. She was about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed around 140 pounds. She had a circular burn scar on her left leg, a detail that would later become important in a painful and confusing chapter of the case. At the time she vanished, Lucinda was married to Larry Huels. She had 2 very young children, a son and a daughter. Her daughter, Deanna, was only an infant when Lucinda disappeared. Her son, Tony, was still a toddler. Fox 13 later reported that the family did not believe Lucinda would have willingly abandoned her children, especially because she had been planning Tony's second birthday party at the time. That is one of the quiet heartbreaks of the case. Lucinda was not a name on a flyer to her family. She was the person who should have been there for birthdays, for small mornings, for the routines that make a home feel ordinary. Her children grew up with a photograph, a story, and a question. And for many years, there was very little else. In public case summaries, she is sometimes referred to as Tinsa Huels, and sometimes as Lucinda Huels. NCMEC notes that she may have used the alias Lucinda Harris. The Charlie Project also notes possible last names Harris and Malden. These details are small, but in missing person cases, small details matter. Names matter. Aligned matter. Physical descriptions matter because they are part of how investigators keep a person's identity present over time. And in Lucinda's case, identity would become one of the most complicated parts of all. The last known events began on the night of October 26, 1984, and moved into the early hours of October 27th. According to public case summaries, Lucinda left her Hillsborough County home to go to a laundromat. That was the reason she gave when she left. The laundry would later become one of the strongest signs that she had, at least for part of the night, done what she said she was going to do. But at some point that evening, the path changed. The Charlie Project reports that Lucinda went to a female friend's home, and then the two went out for drinks at the Char-Pal Lounge, located in the 3700 block of East Busch Avenue in Tampa. Fox 13 also reported that she was seen at Char-Pal Lounge with friends later that night. Char-Pal Lounge was near Busch Gardens. It was not described by later reporting as a quiet or harmless place. Fox 13 noted that the tavern had once been connected to a 1970s extortion case involving mob figures, and that a version of that incident later became connected to a scene in the film Goodfellas. But for this story, the important thing is not movie history. The important thing is that Lucinda, a 17-year-old mother of two, was there that night, and then she was gone. At the bar, according to the Charlie Project, Lucinda spoke with a man named Larry Moore. He reportedly told her he owned a sign-making and cleaning business and offered her a job. Lucinda agreed to begin work in 2 days. Her friend left the bar, leaving Lucinda behind with Moore. This is one of the last publicly documented moments in which Lucinda was seen by people who could place her somewhere. A lounge, a conversation, a job offer, a friend leaving. And then the record becomes unclear. In the early hours of the following morning, Moore and another man were found asleep in a vehicle on the roadside. Police encountered them and arrested them on marijuana possession and carrying a concealed weapon charges. Lucinda was not with them. At that point, she had not yet been reported missing. Later, when Moore was questioned about Lucinda's disappearance, he said he did not know where she was. The Charlie Project notes that it is unclear whether he was ever viewed as a suspect. That uncertainty is important. There is no public proof that Moore caused Lucinda's disappearance. There is no public explanation for where she went after that night. Fox 13 later reported that detectives interviewed several people who had been at the bar, but the accounts did not line up neatly. People seem to remember her with different people when they left, and that is often how an investigation becomes difficult. Not always, because there are no witnesses. Sometimes because the witnesses remember different pieces. A person standing near the door, a person talking to someone at the bar, a person outside, a person still inside, a person leaving with one person or another, or no one clearly at all. In the morning, Lucinda's car was found in the Char-Pal Lounge parking lot. It was unlocked. Inside was a basket of clean, folded laundry. The keys were missing. That image has stayed with the case for decades. Clean laundry suggests return. It suggests a task completed. It suggests home was still part of the plan. The car being left behind suggests interruption. The keys being missing suggests movement, or at least someone taking them. But none of those details can speak fully on their own. They only tell us that Lucinda did not return home in her car. They tell us that her laundry was there. They tell us that something happened between the ordinary errand and the morning light. 2 weeks after Lucinda disappeared, her purse was found in a men's bathroom at the Busch Gardens Zoo campground. The Charlie Project states that the purse contained her cash, driver's license, and marriage certificate. NCMEC also notes that her purse was found at a campground and that only her keys were missing. This is another strange detail. A purse is personal. It carries identity. It carries money. It carries the small items a person expects to need. If Lucinda had left voluntarily to start a new life, her family wondered why she would leave behind her purse and money. Fox 13 reported that her family did not think it was likely she had simply run away, especially given the abandoned items and her plans for her son's birthday. And yet, in the early stages of a missing person case, investigators must consider many possibilities. A runaway, a voluntary disappearance, a stranger, someone known to her, a chance encounter, a planned meeting, a crime of opportunity, a misunderstanding, a rumor, a lead that feels promising and then fades. Lucinda's case entered that long, difficult space where nothing could be proven enough to bring her home. Her family searched. Her name appeared on missing posters. Her children grew older. And for 7.5 years, the case remained an open wound. Then, in 1992, the phone rang. By 1992, Lucinda had been missing for years. Her daughter Deanna had never really known her mother. Fox 13 later reported that Deanna knew Lucinda mostly through a portrait, missing posters, taxicab notices, and television coverage. She knew her mother's face, but not her voice. Then, one day, when Deanna was 8 years old, she answered the phone. A woman on the other end said she was her mother. For a child who had grown up with absence, it must have been almost impossible to understand. The woman claimed she was Lucinda. She said she had left in 1984 because she was overwhelmed by the responsibilities of marriage and motherhood. According to Fox 13, she told the family she had hitchhiked away, lived in Memphis, and used the name Amanda. At first, this seemed like the answer everyone had wanted. Lucinda was alive. She had not been killed. She had not been lost forever. She had returned. Newspaper stories at the time treated it as a remarkable homecoming. Fox 13 reported that Lucinda's husband, Larry, was interviewed in 1992 after learning that the woman believed to be Lucinda was alive and coming home. His reaction, as described in that reporting, was focused less on why she had left and more on the relief that she was alive. Lucinda's younger sister, Katrina Hart, later remembered the moment as exciting, emotional, and frightening. The family had questions, but they also wanted to repair what had been broken. It is easy, from a distance, to ask how a family could accept a person without absolute proof. But distance makes everything look simpler than it is. This was not a puzzle to them. This was their daughter, their sister, their wife, their mother, and they had been waiting for years. The woman looked very much like Lucinda. Fox 13 reported that she seemed to know a lot about the family. The resemblance was strong enough that some family members would continue to wonder about it years later. There was also the matter of a mark on the leg. Lucinda had a circular burn scar on her left leg, a detail listed by NCMEC and the Charlie Project. Fox 13 reported that Detective Waylon Stepp in Springdale, Arkansas, had a female officer privately observe a mark on the woman's leg, and that this helped convince investigators at the time. The woman admitted to Detective Stepp that she was Lucinda Huels. He later described the admission as convincing. A Hillsborough County detective also traveled to Arkansas to interview her in person and was reportedly convinced. Larry and Katrina then drove to Arkansas to bring her back. And so, for a while, the impossible seemed true. Lucinda came home, or at least, Everyone believed she had. The woman lived with the family for several months. She became part of their daily life. Tony, Lucinda's son, was 10 years old by then. Fox 13 later reported that he remembered feeling a connection with her and, even years later, struggled with the emotional complexity of that time. For Deanna, this woman became the closest thing to a living memory of her mother. For Larry, it was the return of a wife he had mourned without a grave. For the extended family, it was a second chance. But questions remained. In public reporting, the woman's story was that she had run away, lived under another name, and built a different life. But the details were difficult to settle. Then, in September 1992, blood testing proved that the woman was not Lucinda. Her real name was Amanda Dennis, an Arkansas woman who had run away as a teenager. The Charlie Project identifies her by full name, while Fox 13 later chose not to use her last name because she had not been charged with a crime. The result was devastating. Fox 13 reported that when the truth came out, Amanda apologized for the hurt she had caused the Huels family, especially the children. She said she had grown to love them during the months she lived with them. Then she returned to Arkansas. For Lucinda's family, the loss happened all over again. They had lived through disappearance once, then they lived through return, then they lived through disappearance again. This time with the added pain of knowing the woman they had welcomed was not the person they had been missing. Deanna later described it as starting over with no mother. Her father had no wife again. Her grandmother had one less daughter again. That is one of the most painful parts of this case. The 1992 episode did not solve Lucinda's disappearance. It created another mystery inside it. How did Amanda know enough to convince them? Did she learn details from news coverage? Did she simply resemble Lucinda and allow hope to fill in the gaps? Did she meet Lucinda at some point after the disappearance? The Charlie Project notes that because Amanda seemed to know enough about Lucinda to convince many family members, some have theorized that the two women may have met after Lucinda vanished. But that remains only a theory. Years later, Tony contacted Amanda through Facebook Messenger. According to Fox 13, he asked if she was his mother. She said no. He asked if she knew his mother. She said no, but said she wished she did. Amanda also apologized in an email to Deanna and said she would answer questions. There is something deeply human in that. Not simple, not excusable in an easy way, but human. A lonely person, perhaps, stepped into a family's longing. A grieving family believed what they most wanted to be true. And somewhere beneath all of it, the real Lucinda was still missing. Lucinda's case remains unsolved because the known facts do not lead to one confirmed answer. There are several public theories, but none has been proven. The first possibility is that Lucinda encountered someone at or near the Char-Pal lounge who harmed her or caused her to disappear. This theory is supported only in the general sense that she was last seen after being at the lounge. Her car was left there, and witness accounts did not clearly establish what happened after. The second possibility is that someone she had spoken with that night knew more than they admitted. Public sources name Larry Moore as a person who spoke with her and offered her work. He was questioned later and said he did not know where she was. The Charlie Project makes clear that it is not known whether he was ever considered a suspect. That point must be handled carefully. A person can be part of the timeline without being guilty. A person can be the last known contact without being responsible. And in a case this old, where public information is limited, it would be unfair to state more than the records support. The third possibility is that Lucinda became another victim of Bobby Joe Long. Authorities initially suspected that possibility, according to the Charlie Project, and Fox 13 reported that it became a common theory because Long was active in the Tampa Bay area in 1984 and was arrested 3 weeks after Lucinda disappeared. but long denied involvement in Lucinda's case, and Lucinda's body was never found. Her family has not accepted that theory as certain. Again, the timeline may make a theory possible, but possibility is not proof. The fourth possibility, raised by some because of Amanda's knowledge and resemblance, is that Lucinda survived for some period after October 1984 and somehow crossed paths with Amanda. This is not proven. Amanda later told Tony she did not know Lucinda. It remains one of the case's strangest questions. How did Amanda know what she knew? How did she seem familiar enough to be accepted? Was it resemblance? Was it research? Was it coincidence? Was it hope? The truth may be simpler than it felt, or it may be hidden in a conversation no one else heard. The fifth possibility is voluntary disappearance, but Lucinda's family has long doubted that. Her car, laundry, purse, money, driver's license, and marriage certificate were all left behind or found later. She also left behind 2 young children and was reportedly planning her son's birthday party. None of that makes voluntary disappearance impossible, but it does make it harder for her family to believe. And because no confirmed sighting of the real Lucinda has publicly resolved the case, the official answer remains open. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office is listed as the investigating agency on the NCMEC poster. There is one more reason the case remains unsolved: time. The disappearance happened in 1984. That was before modern DNA databases became what they are today, before cell phone location data, before surveillance cameras were as common as they are now, before digital trails became part of everyday life. Investigators had witness interviews, physical items, missing person reports, and community information. But they did not have many tools that people now expect in modern cases. The parking lot could not tell its story. The laundry could not say who had touched the keys. The purse could not explain how it reached the campground. And the people who were there that night, if they are still living, have carried those memories through decades. Some memories fade. Some details change. Some people stay silent. Some never realize that the small thing they saw mattered. That is why old missing person cases can remain open for so long. Not always because nobody cared, often because the truth was never caught in time. When we look back at Lucinda Huels' disappearance, the facts are simple to list. She left home to go to the laundromat. She was later seen at Char-Pal Lounge. Her car was found there with clean, folded laundry inside. Her purse was found 2 weeks later at the Busch Gardens Zoo campground. Years later, a woman claimed to be her, lived with her family, and was then proven not to be Lucinda. And today, Lucinda remains missing. But the emotional truth of the case is not simple at all. It is the story of a young mother whose children grew up with a question where a parent should have been. It is the story of a husband who, according to family reporting, never remarried and carried the loss quietly. It is the story of relatives who allowed themselves to hope, because hope can be almost impossible to refuse when someone you love has been gone for years. It is the story of mistaken identity, not as a trick in a novel, but as something that happened inside a real family's living room. And it is the story of the missing person at the center, who can so easily be overshadowed by the strangeness of what happened later. Lucinda was 17. She was not just a mystery. She was a person. She had brown hair and brown eyes. She had a scar on her left leg. She had children who needed her. She had a family who wanted her home. She had a life that was interrupted, somewhere between an ordinary errand and a parking lot near Busch Gardens. The most haunting part of this case may be that for a few months in 1992, the family lived in a version of the world where Lucinda had come back. They heard someone answer to her name. They shared meals. They asked questions. They tried to rebuild. And then the truth came quietly. Through testing, through paperwork, through the kind of answer that solves one question while reopening another. The woman was not Lucinda. So where was Lucinda? That question still waits. It waits in old case files. It waits in family memory. It waits in the spaces between witness statements. It waits in the place where the keys disappeared. It waits in the unanswered path from the lounge to the campground. And perhaps, somewhere, it waits with a person who knows something and has never spoken. For now, Lucinda Huels remains missing from Tampa, Florida. Her case remains active, and her family still deserves the answer that time has not yet given them. Thank you for listening with care tonight. If you have credible information about the disappearance of Tinza Lucinda Huels, public missing person records list the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Florida as the investigating agency, and NCMEC also maintains her missing child poster. As we close, let the story rest gently. Remember Lucinda not only for the mystery, but for the life interrupted. A young woman, a mother, a daughter, a sister, still missing, still remembered, and still waiting to be found.